Hey, what's up you guys, it's Connor, and today I'm going to be doing a book review slash discussion on A Conjuring of Light by V.E. Schwab. This is the third book in the Shades of Magic trilogy. If you guys don't know, the first book is A Dark Shade of Magic, then A Gathering of Shadows, and then A Conjuring of Light. I did book reviews for the first and second book in the series, and I'll leave those up in the card symbol if you want to check it out. Those are both non-spoilers, so you can do that and not worry about anything. I'm going to keep the beginning of this video non-spoiler and then go into some spoilers later, so I'll warn you before I do that. And I don't have to go into a whole spiel about what this book is about because you either already know or you can watch one of those two videos to find out the premise of this book. As usual with my book reviews slash discussions, I'm going to go through my pros, go through my cons, give you my rating, and then go into spoilers. My first pro for this book is that I just think that it was easier for me to get invested in the story. A lot of different elements come into play for that, so I'll go through those one by one. But in the first two books, I found myself not caring as much about the plot or caring about the characters, and I couldn't get invested in the story. But in this one, I could, and I got really engaged with what was happening, and I actually continued with the story because I got invested. I would have DNF'd this book quite early on if I wasn't starting to get invested in all of these different things. So with getting invested, I think that the plot was a lot better, especially better than the second book. In the second one, I felt like the plot didn't really get going. There was a lot of build-up, a lot of build-up, a lot of build-up, and then it kind of exploded and everything was crazy and we didn't really have a consistent and steady plot. In this one, we did have a consistent and steady plot. There was always things happening. There was always something that I was interested in, and there was some action sprinkled throughout. So there was interesting things happening with the characters and with the overall problem that comes up in this book. This plot also takes this story wider than the narrow scope that it was in before. We go outside of London, which is where this entire series has been focused around. We've only really experienced Red London, Grey London, White London, and we haven't really gone outside of that besides when Lila decided to go off on a miniature adventure. So in this one, I'm glad that we actually went away during the actual plot, the meat of the story, and we explored some other areas, but we also got a lot more focus on how London and how the Londoners relate to the outside world, and how there are other players besides just London that affect this world. I know that Victoria is continuing the series in a sequel series. I'm not sure what that's about, but it could easily be set in a wider framework. I could see all of these other countries that are involved with this plot a little bit becoming a lot bigger deal, and maybe having something set outside of London. So I hope she takes her world in that direction where she makes it even bigger and explains these different cultures besides just London. But in this one, I'm glad we got a little taste of that outside world, and it helped me feel more concrete in the world building. It helped me realize where London is in comparison to all of the people in all of the places around London. I especially liked all of this pirate stuff that has happened, privateer, and the storyline where they went outside of London and started doing things. I think that definitely will come back into play because of how she did it. She definitely left that thread open to be returned to in future books. So I'm excited to see where that leads, and that is one of the plot lines in this book that I really, really enjoyed. The biggest improvement in this book that I think pushed it above and beyond the other two books is that I think that she just did the characters so much better in this one. I could not get invested in Lila, I could not get invested in Kel. I didn't really like them all that much, and I didn't care what they were up to, and that's why I didn't care about the plots of the first two books. In this one, Victoria gave us a lot more information about them. Not really all that much about Lila. She still kind of is frustrated in that regard, but we got a lot more about Kel and his childhood with Rye. I love that she addressed the fact that we don't know anything about Kel before he shows up at the palace in Red London. We don't find all the information out because I'm sure she'll tease that out in future books, but I'm glad she at least addressed it, and we got some information about how the boys were raised and how Rye and Kel's relationship started and they became close. It made me connect a lot more with Kel and then with Rye. So I think that she did her main characters better as well as the side characters. I think that she did the side characters in this extremely well. Side characters are something that I think that V.E. Schwab has a little bit of trouble with sometimes. I thought that the side characters in the Monsters of Verity series were lacking and were not given enough substance and exploration to really connect with them. But in this book, we did get that information that I think was really necessary. I freaking loved Rye's mother, Amira. I thought she was incredible. She definitely is the one that made this book for me. I got invested in this book because of Amira. It explores Amira having a hard time with motherhood and with her life and what happened. She has a very complicated relationship with the boys and with motherhood in general and with being queen. So I thought that her struggles and how she's developed as a person was really well done in this book. And so I think Amira started it all, and then I started caring about Rai and Kel, and then about Alucard as well. But honestly, Amira is my favorite character in this trilogy. I think she's great. The reason why I got so invested in Amira is because Victoria added more POVs. We get some perspective from these side characters, so I was able to get more inside their heads, and that's why I think that these side characters were more real for me in this. I think that expanding the number of POVs was a really smart decision in this series because I didn't care about the main two in the first or second books. Alucard was my favorite character in the second book, so I think bringing in more POVs and bringing in more different types of people that people are able to relate to was a good decision. I also like that she brought some older characters back into the story. Some smaller characters that weren't as important throughout the series come back and play bigger roles in this, and I thought that that was really well done. It kind of reminds me of how in the Harry Potter series all these minor characters come back in the 7th book for the final battle, and I think that that was really well done. She took advantage of these small little characters and brought them back in, and I appreciated it. So for pros, I got invested, I liked the characters a lot more, and I think that the plot was better paced and just more entertaining overall. I also like that we finally addressed the big bad in this world. We finally got a showdown between this big evil presence and the good guy characters. So I felt like at the end of this book, I got some catharsis because something actually happens. Now I'm going to talk about a couple of cons. One con for me is that I was really hoping that more would be wrapped up in this because I wasn't really enjoying the first 2 books, so I wasn't that excited about reading the 3rd one before I jumped into it and started getting invested. So a con for me is that there is a lot of loose threads. Like I mentioned before, there's that whole privateer pirate thread that has been left open. A couple of other ones have also been left wide open so that she can come back and play with them. So I wish that more had been wrapped up in this final book, but I know she's continuing to write more, so she needed to leave some open, but I don't know. It's kind of like I know what she's doing, but I wish that there was more wrapped up. And the only other con that I had was that I really didn't love the writing style in this. I'm not sure what has happened because I really loved her older books that I read, or the first books that I read. I haven't really enjoyed the later ones that I've read as much. It might be something where I've changed as a reader and now I prefer different types of writing styles to what I preferred when I was younger, but I've noticed that Victoria Schwab really loves to avoid the word or and. Instead, she likes to use very dramatic appositives where she just redefines words over and over again. Especially in the beginning of this book, she used a lot of em-dashes and she used a ton of appositives, and it was hard for me to get into the novel because all of these punctuations were breaking things up when I was just trying to get a flow and get in the groove of reading this novel and being with these characters again. In my opinion, the writing tries maybe just a little bit too hard to be dramatic when you can have dramatic things happening and you can have an impact without making it so obvious that you're making the characters redefine everything in their heads 3 times. It's very monologue-y, I guess, and overly dramatic. I have a couple of examples on my phone. These aren't going to spoil anything, so you don't have to worry about that. I'll give you a little reference and then you can decide for yourself if it's overly dramatic or if you think it's totally fine. So this one is about one of the characters. She's having a hard time sleeping just because of everything that's been going on, especially in the last book, and now there's lots of evil in the world. She brushed him off, though in truth she was tired in a way she'd rarely known. A tired that went down far past skin and muscle and even bone, dragged its fingers through her mind until everything rippled and blurred. A tired that made it hard to breathe, hard to think, hard to be. Hard to be. She's so tired it's hard to be. So that was very dramatic. Okay, so this is another character. This is actually dialogue. I've never heard anyone speak like this in my life, but this one thing says, until he broke my arm, my shoulder, my ribs. There's no word and there. It's just like, why not just say he broke my arm, my shoulders, and my ribs? But it's just kind of redefining and implying broken again and again. So it's until he broke my arm, my shoulders, my ribs. I don't know. Maybe I was just being very picky, but it was very dramatic. I've never heard anyone describe an injury like that. I have more examples, but they're all about the same thing. Just listing things just to list things. And as I said, it pushed me out of the story and I didn't love it. So those were really my only two cons. So with all of those pros, I ended up really enjoying this novel unexpectedly. I rated this novel 4 stars, which is higher than any of the other ones. And if you've read the first 2 books, I would go ahead and recommend just finishing it off because I do think that it's significantly better. You just have to be able to work through the writing style. But yeah, now I'm going to go into spoilers. If you guys don't know, when I do discussions, I usually do spoilers based off character. So I'm going to go through the list of characters that I wanted to talk about and just talk about them. Spoilers. I want to talk about some of the more obscure side characters and then I'll work my way to the main ones. I really love Tyrion in this. I don't know how you pronounce his name. It's T-I-E-R-E-N, I believe. He's the head of the religion of Red London, and I just thought that he was fantastic. I love that he is kind of behind the scenes and he's working all of these different threads and he's pulling these people in different positions, well, at least trying to. I think that religion could have been explored a little bit more in this world because I think that Tyrion is such an interesting character. I feel like he could have done more. He's one of those characters that knows more than he's letting on. You can tell that he's got little spies around the castle because he always knows what all the characters are doing even when they haven't really told anyone. I have a feeling that he knows where Kel is from and he knows what the deal with Lila is, and you know that he knows things that maybe he shouldn't because when the king was planning all of his craziness that he was planning, that who would think that that would have worked? He knows that the king is doing something that's gonna end up with him dying. He tries to get Rye to stop his father from basically sacrificing himself. So I just think that he's really interesting and I'm glad that he made it through this series because I think that he will play a bigger role in the books to come. I think this religion aspect of this world could be fleshed out a little more. It just seems like it's there and he's an advisor, but I think that the religion usually plays a bigger role in things. I know he's the one that kind of sacrificed himself for this huge sleep spell that they put over all of Red London so that they were able to have their final battle without him having more power. So I'm not sure. I just think that he's got a lot of things going on and I think that he's going to come back into play. I'm excited to see where she takes his character. I really loved the story arc for Lenos, whatever, and Hastra. I feel like they both did their duties well. I think they imparted the different things that they were supposed to impart to the main characters and then they ended up being casualties in this big overall conflict, and I thought that that was well done because not everyone is gonna be safe, and she kind of kept her main characters safe a little more than maybe they should have. I think maybe one of them might have died in real life, like one of the overall good guys, the ones from Red London or Lila. So I'm glad that she at least sacrificed a couple of the main people that are liked and the people doing things. They played the role of the innocents being lost. And as I said, their arc was a really well-rounded, solid character arc. I also really love the side character Yasta, don't know how to pronounce that. She's the one that they used her ship to get to the pirate lady. I can't remember all their specific names, but the one who stole people's ears and also gave Lila the black eye. And then Yasta ends up betraying them. I just loved her. I thought she was so great. I was definitely on board with her betraying them because that's what pirates and privateers do. They are not the most moral of people. I thought that it really showed the differences between someone that's kind of just in that world. That's all Yasta does is this pirating privateer stuff when compared to Alucard, who is a nobleman who got kicked out of his household and then fell back into pirating slash privateering. I think that it showed the differences really well because Alucard never really lost those morals. He just kind of put them on pause for a little bit, and Yasta is more morally gray and is really out for the money. I thought that she was a great character, so I enjoyed seeing her and her progression and ultimately her death. I was just really glad that there was a lot of character death in this as well. Speaking of character deaths, Holland, that was great. Good decision. He was such a kind of like annoying character, but I also still really enjoyed reading about him in this final book. He was one of those characters that I didn't feel fully was fleshed out until this novel, where we started getting his POV and his flashbacks to his childhood and what was happening with him. We got a lot of flashbacks to Holland's childhood and how everyone that he loved and everyone that he invested himself in betrayed him and tried to kill him at some point because of his magical abilities. It makes sense because he lived in a world that was dying and people are trying to capture the magic for themselves. I really enjoyed that Holland had that one guy who was kind of morally gray. He wasn't the greatest of guys, but he never betrayed Holland, but he ended up being murdered. So I thought that Holland in this book was way better. I can understand why people love him so much now and talk about him on Twitter and tweet at Victoria about Holland. I get it. I like Holland now. He was always a slave to the magic, but then he kind of gets out of that at the very end. I thought that his death scene was really well done. He gets back to his world. He dies where he wants to die, in that forest. And I just loved that overall. I loved that Kell extended that olive branch kind of when he left that one token. So if Holland ever wanted to come back to Red London, he could. Obviously, in the scheme of things, it's a huge mistake, because now if there's another Antari that shows up in White London, they can just come to Red London whenever they want. So Kell is just stupid, but it was kind to Holland at the very end, because especially Holland sacrifices himself to get rid of this evil black magic crazy man. As you can tell in my non-spoiler section, I really enjoyed these side characters. My favorite side character was Amira. I thought she was great, how she didn't ever want to be a mother because she was so accident prone as a child. She felt like she was responsible for all of the different things that happened in her life that fell apart, and she didn't want that to happen. In the moment that she found out that she was pregnant with Rye, she started becoming very paranoid about Rye getting hurt. I assume she wasn't too involved in Kell coming from wherever he came from, coming into the palace, and she was gonna raise him as another son, but then she couldn't invest herself that way with Kell because she was afraid that if he broke, it would be too much for her. She already had all that worry with Rye and having Rye get hurt, that having Kell in that role as well was just overly daunting, and she kind of put Kell in this other category, this guardian position for Rye, and that allowed her to pretend that she didn't care about Kell as much as she did. And she gives Kell that cloth from his childhood, something that a parent would make for their son, and it has their last name's initial. I can't remember their last name. I thought that that was very sweet. I just really loved Amira in this. I think that she had a lot of growth without having a lot of page time, which was interesting because she doesn't have a lot of page time. She's really portrayed as this very cold woman in the first couple of books, and I didn't really care about the king and queen all that much in the first couple books, but in this one we get her perspective, we got her childhood, we saw where she was coming from, and because of that we were able to feel for her, and we wanted her to be happy, at least I did, and then she ends up getting murdered. I was so upset. I wanted her to survive. She's like the only character that died that I wanted to live. I understand it because it was the final straw for the king, Maxim or whatever. Maxim, I can't remember his name, but it was the final straw for him to get out of the castle and try his whole stabby proxy thing, but that didn't work. Sorry if it shifted, my battery just died. Speaking of the king, I thought that his proxy thing, while valiant, was just kind of stupid. We definitely knew it wasn't going to work because they have tried to stab him with other weapons before, trying to weaken his power and disconnect him from this power. So I don't really know why the king would be dumb enough to try this out. I know he was doing all of this illegal blood magic and basically did a spell that was too big for him and ended up with him being killed anyway. Like, he would have died just with this spell. It was too much. So I don't really know. I think he was just sacrificing himself to be noble, but as Tyrion said, it would be better for the king to be alive than to just be dead and nothing being accomplished from his death. But now that he's gone, bye, and now Rye is king, I think he'll have some interesting things happen, especially because he's not alive, sort of. He's only alive because Kell is alive, and he's just like a magic proxy for Kell. I think that that will be really interesting in the coming books because I don't know how that'll work. Does Kell have to be close enough to Rye to keep him alive? Doesn't seem like it needs to be because he got on that ship at the end of the book with Lila, but it seems like Rye could over time become corrupt because he's just this magical essence trapped in a dead body, because every time that Kell would be injured or he would be separated from his magic, Rye would start to turn back into a dead body and get all gross and stuff. He's not really alive, but he is alive. I think that she will play with that maybe in the future if she decides to stay within Red London and stay with these specific characters. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out with the religion aspect, because he isn't technically alive and he did get stabbed. I mean, that's how his mom got stabbed in the heart. Honestly, the best parts with Rye in them were the parts where he was a child. He and Kell were growing really close, and no matter how much they tried to separate them and how much Amira tried to put a wedge in between the two boys, they just acted like brothers no matter what, and I was like, yeah. I kind of touched on all of these things with Kell, his childhood, with Rye, getting really close with him, being brothers with him, and I just really liked seeing at least some of his backstory besides him being an adult and having some grudges towards the royal family. Parents, not Rye. It's kind of like he always wanted to be accepted by them, but when Amira was finally ready to open her heart to Kel. It was a little bit too late and they didn't fully connect before Amira ended up dying. You can tell that the characters know that the other care for them, but they don't know how to express it. I think that that made a lot of sense because it's been so long, they've lived in this weird tension for so long that it's hard to break that down. And I think that if it had been broken down, if Kel had hugged Amira back when Amira gave him that cloth, I don't think it would have been as believable as what happened in the book, with Kel being very rigid and very uncomfortable with Amira showing him affection. It just wouldn't have made any sense if he had showed that affection back. Because Kel, as a result of being held at arm's length, also tends to hold people at arm's length besides Rai and besides Lila, for some reason. You guys know I've never been a huge fan of Lila. She's fine. She was a little better in this. She's still very dramatic. I found the most dramatic characters ended up being Rai, Alucard, and Kel. I don't know why all of those positives always happened with them, especially Kel. Kel has like a very dramatic monologue in his head. But Lila, she's fine. I think she's kind of a insert character for Victoria. I'm not 100% on that, but it seems like that. Those characters that come back into the story that I was so excited about was that one character that's in Grey London and how he's now the keeper of this awful magical being. That's one of the plot threads that's left wide open because we know that the king of Grey London is being influenced by the black magic guy. We got some of Lila caring about the owner of that inn, I can't remember his name, but I'm glad it was brought back into this to kind of humanize Lila a little bit and show that she does put a lot of herself in her select group of people, like Kel, Rai, Alucard, and that barkeeper. And the last one I want to talk about is Alucard. I loved his story in this. We got a lot more story of his backstory, why he ended up being a privateer in the first place / pirate. He ended up having bad relations with his brother and his father because they found out that he was seeing Rai in secret and they didn't approve of Alucard being in a homosexual relationship. And they also viewed homosexuality as, I guess, like an embarrassment, a shame on the family. They beat Alucard into a pulp, almost killed him, and then shipped him off, and Alucard didn't really have a choice. He could have come back, but he thought it was better to stay away. I really liked that. I think something that traumatic obviously would have lasting effects, so I understood why Alucard wouldn't immediately come back, and I understood why there was some weird misunderstandings between Rai, Alucard, and Kel. So I liked seeing all of that, and I liked how Alucard, Mr. Pretty Boy, is no longer Mr. Pretty Boy because he has been changed and altered by the fog that was going on, that was killing a whole bunch of people. I'm glad that there were some serious ill effects for him, and I'm glad that he's not Mr. Pretty Boy anymore because it kind of took him down a few pegs. But I still really enjoy him. As I'm talking about it, I'm really enjoying all the characters again, so maybe I will continue. I wasn't sure if I was going to continue with the series or not, but now that I'm talking about all the characters and how I want to know how they end up in the future of the series, I definitely think I will continue. But I thought that it was interesting that he had these terrible reactions, and then this world ended up being a lot more okay because Rai and Alucard are now back together. Rai is obviously king, and Alucard is his consort? Is that what his title is? Alucard brought that mirror in and showed everyone their intimacy in the bedroom. I'm curious to see if the relationship lasts because they've only been in secret for so long, and I know that relationships that are kept in secret don't usually work out. You can only be secret with someone for so long before it becomes tiresome, or one person wants more, or one person's ready to be out and open about it and the other person's not. It causes problems. So now that they're both out and together, I wonder what will happen with that and how people will react with that. So that's another thing that I'm interested in seeing what happens in the future. Those are all the notes that I have that I've taken on this. If you guys want to talk about anything else, leave it down in the comments with a spoiler warning so that people know not to click read more. So just say spoiler, enter a few times, and then write your comment about anything that you want to discuss spoilers wise. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up and comment down below what you thought about this book. Again, leave that spoiler warning. Or if you agree with anything that I said, let me know that as well. If you disagreed with anything that I said, also leave it down below. Let's discuss. Be respectful, and I will talk to you guys next time.